All right, people, welcome back. My name is Dave. This is the Radical Independent, where we give you a lot of different things. Yesterday, we were talking about medical apartheid. Today, we've got uh, candidates again running for governor and lieutenant governor in the great state of Florida, very warm place to live. We've got two guys who are very sharp, very smart, and have great ideas. Okay, first of all, we got Hector Roos, who is back with us. Say hello, Hector. Don't say hello.
Hello, Dave.
All right.
You know it's like this.
I thought he was going to say hello, Hector. I should have just said hello. And we've got, for the first time on today's show, a pastor from Jacksonville, Florida. His name is Tub Rorabaugh. I hope I've got your last name correct. And Tub is on this ticket as the lieutenant governor candidate. So I got both. I got the A team here. I got both of these guys on, and we're going to talk politics, issues, the church. We're just going to throw a bunch of stuff at everybody and see where it goes. How are you doing today, Tub?
I'm doing well, and let me just tell you, you did very well with the last name. I was like in ninth grade before I think I got it right. So thank you for that.
Couldn't say. I my last name is kind of rough too. A lot of people are always mispronouncing it. That's why I kind of don't say it that much, because people will say to me, "Okay, how do you say it?" I'm like, "All right, we're wasting too much time, so let's just get on."
Smith.
It's
I tell
just
people all the time, Smith.
Yeah, it's just Dave. Just call me Dave. So, guys, you've got kind of a big task here, and some would say a very uphill road, as many libertarians have across the country. Tub, I watched a speech, by the way, that you gave, I think last year to a group. I went on YouTube, and there it was, and you were saying some really inspiring things. You were getting the crowd really fired up there, um, basically saying, "Look, we're really sick and tired of the same old thing, but we keep it's like that, abuse syndrome where you say, I'm just going to go back because this is what I'm familiar with, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, whatever it is." And you were saying, this isn't change. These aren't change agents. And it's almost like being a doctor, even though you're a pastor, and always just treating symptoms, because that's kind of what politics does. It treats the symptoms, but it never addresses the underlying causes. So, Tub, tell us about that. Like, what, in a nutshell, how is it that we're always kind of like just looking on the surface and we're not really addressing the big problems?
Okay, so if what you're referring to is the convention that we had a couple years ago, I think that maybe that's what you're talking about.
I think it
And
was
I actually,
2021. Yeah, might have been
yes, sir.
2020.
Yep. No, I think you're probably right. I think it's 2021. And I got up there and I kind of the first thing I said to them was, "Hey, listen, we have the best message and the absolute worst messengers. Like we truly having the word of liberty and freedom. Like we own that. We possess it. I love when these other parties start talking about freedom, and we're just sitting back here going, okay, yeah, you keep talking about freedom, and we've kind of been established here. And so what's happened though is we've become very complacent. We've become very complacent, even as libertarians, which is part of my problem. We like to complain, and so we complain, and we ultimately do nothing, and then we just blame the other two parties for why we can't get anything accomplished.
Yeah.
And I say that, you know what, at some point you got to stop blaming and you got to start moving and doing something. And the thing was, that was actually what got me involved. Listen, I've been a registered libertarian for over 15 years now. So, like, I'm not like new to libertarianism. I'm just new to actually doing something.
Yeah.
And so I followed the path of everybody else. I followed the path of, well, that's horrible, and I hate that they do that. And I felt like I was better because I was not part of one of those two groups. But just not being part of one of those two groups doesn't solve anything. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
just sitting on the outside doing nothing, complaining. At some point, you have to insert yourself. At some point, you got to be willing to say, "Hey, we're going to take some hits here." Like right now, Hector and I for this campaign, we're going to take some hits. Like let's be honest, because we're libertarians and people don't understand. So my thinking is, let's get some good people out there to take some hits, so that if nothing else, when the next cycle comes through and they go to run for office, they don't have to take some of these hits. That we've taken some, we've answered some of the questions, and now maybe that will get people, libertarians, I should say, that will get libertarians out of their complacency and actually willing to go do something.
Yeah, that's good. Hector, do you think that, like for instance, during the 2020 presidential campaign, was Joe Jorgensen was the nominee for the party, and
Yep.
we were in the midst of lockdowns and incredible tyranny. I mean, I was just, my mind continues, by the way, to be blown about how people could just kind of give away, say, sure, yes, I'll do what the government is telling me to do so long as I can go on a cruise, right? Or some crazy thing. And you had a candidate who was on the road, again, obviously her platform, if you went through it, you would say, okay, yep, I like the platform. But the communication was, hey, we're going to talk about these. I mean, I think one of the first things she was talking about was like BLM, right? And one of the statements she made, because we had all these riots all over the place, and you had fiery but peaceful protests and stuff like that. And I'm thinking, what a missed opportunity. Not that some of that is important, some of what, civil asset forfeiture, very important issue, but we were in the midst of like tyranny. Like, I can't think of anything more tyrannical that has ever happened to the United States of America. And you had a messenger who is presenting like almost like a fringe, or not a fringe issue, but an issue that didn't really resonate with most Americans at that moment. Um, do we need to do a better job in general as just citizens, not just as libertarians or whatever, but just as citizens, kind of like, okay, what's the big issue here? They locked us down. They took away our rights. This other party over here says, yeah, we're the Freedom Party. But then they're just like a softer, slower version of that, or they obfuscate what they're really doing, and in the meantime, they've already played you through the media, right? That they're better. But when you look at the results, you're like, well, they did okay, but it took them like how many days to respond, and we still have all of these problems that they're not really addressing. So what's your take on the Jorgensen campaign and just the whole messaging that libertarians do?
So Jorgensen, Joe Jorgensen, Dr. Joe Jorgensen, ran as a candidate, was a fine candidate.
Mhm.
I don't mean to take anything away from her. She campaigned in a very tough year to campaign anywhere. But the messaging, you're right, was off. But what does that really mean? What does that really mean about messaging? The reality comes down to is that, people, when they are confronted with these situations, they just can't surrender to it, right? They actually have to actually respond with, not only do we want this, but we want more than this, because when you're asking us to compromise, we want to compromise on our bottom line, not on their bottom line, right?
Yeah.
So in other words, what does that mean? That means that, no to vaccine passports, no to vaccine mandates, no to forced maskings or other, and frankly, no to this idea that of people who or businesses that are essential. The idea at the end of the day is that there was zero accountability for the decisions that were made. We were told 15 days to stop the spread.
Yeah.
In some place, the emergency in Florida continued on for 475 days, and lockdowns were intermittent throughout the entire state for months. And the reality is that, of course, government at this point and the politicians have gotten used to treating us on a different standard than they treat themselves. They treat their political allies, and frankly, we live in a modern caste system, and that has to change. The only way that changes is because you demand more than you just don't keep them anymore. And when they give in to you, you demand even more on top of that, and you keep doing that until you're satisfied. And just too many people are satisfied with, I will do what you say, because to confront what you're asking me to do makes me too uncomfortable. Without knowing that down the line, and not down the line like 6 months or 6 years, but literally 6 weeks, you could be losing your house. You could be told, you could be lying in a hospital bed because you were told that this was safe, some type of medical treatment was safe and effective. So that's, listen, I say that with a little bit of a grin, but really, it's sad.
Yeah.
It's sad that this country, Western civilization, has basically pointed a knife at itself and said, this is how we feel about ourselves and about what others tell us, and that the spirit of individual rights, the spirit of I will assume the risks for myself, has not had a strong voice in whether in America or elsewhere, and that's really where we have to start pushing back. This campaign is about pushing back. This campaign is about saying, what is it that Tubb said earlier about other parties talking about freedom? No, we are the Freedom Party, so we should be the ones talking about it, and we need, even if at the end of the day we are the ones that draw the line about what freedom even means, because freedom, obviously, by their definition, does not mean what freedom means to the rest of us. And we're challenging not only the book burners, but the people who rewrite the dictionaries. The very notion of 1984 is very much present and alive in 2022. So that's where we're at. And again, thanks, Dave, for having us on. This is an important topic to talk about.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to make this a little bit more hard hitting and sort of fast paced. I mean, you and I did a great chat the last time, but it was almost like two guys at the bar and we didn't know where the subject was going to go. Tubb, the church, you're a church pastor. The church really, really surprised me during the lockdowns. They really shocked me because, I know there are scriptures, and I'm pretty sure you're probably aware of them, that you shouldn't forsake the assembling of the saints. And this is an important thing, to have human connection with other people. And yet there's this pastor out of Atlanta, Georgia. I don't know if you heard his quote. He was on CNN. His name is Andy Stanley. And he said, hey, people really need to go grocery shopping, and people really need to go and get their hair cut or whatever. I mean, he probably didn't say that, but he went down a list of things. And then he said at the end of it, but people really don't need to go to church. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. And he closed his church for months. I mean, and he's like, well, we're doing this out of, precaution. And I don't want to get into all the stats on what the lockdowns did to people, their mental health, their spiritual health, their financial health. I mean, you can go down the list of things, and it was catastrophic. And I don't know if we're ever going to really see the fallout of that until somebody writes a really good book. I just got finished reading The Bodies of Others by Naomi Wolf, and it blows your mind. All of the different, because she documents from the beginning and how we reacted. And I talked to Hector last time about crime scene tape. There was crime scene tape over at Veterans Park across the street from where I live, on the jungle gym and on all the different, the swings, and kids can't go outside and play. But Tubb, my question to you is, what's up with the church, man? What was that?
Okay, hang on. You can't fully expect me to explain what's up with the church in this couple of minutes that you're going to give me. Let's be very clear with that. Now,
do your best.
As far as Andy Stanley goes, let me start with this. So maybe him and I have some doctrinal and theological differences. Okay, I'm a pretty strict Christian in all reality. I know that doesn't align with libertarianism. Maybe we'll cover that later. But your question was about the church and shutting down the church. So here's the thing: I can't speak to what other pastors were doing. You know what I'm saying? I believe that's to them. I might fully disagree with them, and I may not believe that. Hey, you know what? You just followed government is all you did. You didn't truly follow what we're called to do as a church.
There you go.
So I can tell you what we did. So what we did. Now here's the thing: I tell everybody, I cut a little bit of slack to everybody. I don't care which party you're in. I don't care what you have going on. When COVID first hit, we didn't know. Like there's a lot of unknown. And so for the first couple of weeks, I was like, you know what, guys, let's just breathe. We don't know what we're getting into. And I give everybody a little bit of slack for those first couple of weeks. We didn't know what we were getting into. Okay. It was all new. So for us at our church, what we did is we said, okay, if they're telling us we should shut down, this is what I said. I said, we will shut down. And I'll explain that in a minute. We will shut down, not because the government's telling us. We will shut down because maybe our people want to feel like we're not forced into a situation that they're not sure about. Technically, if you will, shut down for 5 weeks. Now, let me explain that out a little bit. So, what we did was we decided we had a small group of us at our church still so that we could do a live feed. Somebody kind of set it up and made me feel like I wasn't preaching to nobody. So, we'd have a small contingency there, like 8 or 10 people. And then we kind of did some house churches and we satellite it and they get on the live feed and we would watch it. And after week 5, I said, this is absurd. I said, there's nothing supporting everything that they're still pushing. We're going to come back in. And we made some allowances and we made some changes inside of our sanctuary for the safety and the feeling of our people. Like I said, once again, I didn't care what government was saying at this point. That we are all adults, and as adults, we will determine whether we're ready to be back in the church building or not. So I explained to people, if you're ready to be back, we are back. And like I said, we made some changes around, but we let those people decide. And then the ones who were still unsure about whether they wanted to be back in that full environment again, we still made it accessible to them to be at their house and still watch the live feed. So we kind of attacked it individually. We basically said, here's who we are, here's where we're at. And basically, as crazy as it sounds, I guess I let my libertarianism speak into the church and let adults decide where they feel is best for them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a good answer. I mean, I'm not saying from the get-go, I just want to be clear, those first few weeks, I mean, my wife works in healthcare, and she would come home and we'd be like, okay, what do? We need to sterilize you. You know, we didn't know what to do. It's like, go jump in the chlorine pool, because we were in a different house. We had an outdoor pool. We don't have the pool anymore because we moved. The funny thing is we were about to buy this house that I'm in now, and we're closing. And I'm like, maybe we should stay so you can, jump in the pool after work and we can make sure that you're sterile. But she worked for Lee Health. Well, she did. She doesn't. She works now for a holistic doctor, which I think is really great. But at the time, nobody knew. Nobody knew at the beginning. Everybody, and this is the power of the media, by the way, and the power of, I hate to use this word, but it's propaganda. But early on, I would say, yeah, you give everything the benefit of the doubt. But I was more, concerned, Tub, about this sort of ongoing, never ending. Also, in addition to that, you got guys out there like TD Jakes and certain people who are shilling for pharmaceutical companies on top of not only, shutting things down, but saying, hey, I think our church members should go ahead and do X, Y, and Z. Okay. And speaking not necessarily from the pulpit, but just from, either, video or little public service announcements that are put together. You walk into, I mean, those were the days where I was walking into supermarkets, Tub. You probably remember this. And over the intercom, they were telling you, like you go into a Walmart and they tell you, oh, by the way, while you're here today, you can go to our pharmacy and we can take care of you. No waiting at this time. And I'm like, wow. I mean, talk about, and I don't want to get into the efficacy or the safety of these products. It's not, because we'll get banned because the video won't go on YouTube if we do that. But that's what I was kind of referring to. It sounds like you were at least paying attention and thinking this through and going, you know what, 5 weeks. John MacArthur, I think, kind of did the same thing out on the West Coast. He was like, and he's in California, and he took a lot of heat because he was like, you know what, guys, our people, our congregation wants to meet. They want to sing. They want to, and they're saying, don't, if you go there, say things like, don't sing, because then you're going to, the particles are going to fly out and contaminate if you sing. And then if you're singing, maybe you can direct your sing. It's like incredible stuff. I mean, and it was such a tyrannical moment. It was such like, okay, I can't believe I'm watching my fellow human beings just sort of atrophy, like with their life, like they don't want to live, because living is more than just breathing. It's like being a part of
experience.
Stuff,
It's experience. So are you talking to me or Hector now?
Either. I mean, you can finish.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Tub.
Go ahead, Tub.
Okay. All right. So first off, like here in town, we had some local churches that were like, oh, if you come by on Sunday, we're going to give you your shot at the same time, and we're going to do these type of things. And let me just tell you, I was pretty outspoken against that. Like, that's absurd. That is not the role of the church. Our role is to lead you spiritually. That's our goal. That's it. Okay.
Right.
So here's what I'm going to tell you: that as far as our church goes, when we opened back up, the only thing that we knew about somebody was we said, hey, if you want to wear a mask, wear one. If you don't. I still, to this day, cannot tell you the status of their vaccines. If I'm allowed to go that far into it, I cannot tell you the status of their vaccination. It's not my business. It's up to them to decide. And then we come back into life the way that we're called to. And here's what was happening, kind of like what you mentioned there, was what they do is they hide their tyranny in a little bit of freedom. Okay? So because they said, oh, we'll go back to your church fine, because they realized that they weren't going to be able to push that one too much longer. Yeah. So they gave us this idea of freedom, but just don't do this while you're there.
Yeah.
So here's freedom, but we're going to control your freedom.
Right. Yeah. No. It was just a real, again, a sad moment, but an opportunity again to show where, for instance, a libertarian philosophy would differ. There are a lot of conservatives out there that think, oh yeah, our governor took the hardest line. I'm talking to Hector, and Hector's saying, 400 and something days is not the hardest line. And then we got red flag laws all over the place. And people, they accept the $1 trillion military budget, right? They just accept that. It's like there's no Tea Party patriots. There's no, kind of like, okay, we remember when we used to talk, at least have a discussion about reining in the scope and size of government, which means, yeah, you look at budgets. I mean, and you cut budgets, right? And people keep more of their own money to do what they want to with that money. And Hector, as the guy who's running for governor here, I mean, your platform has to be, hey, I'm the real fiscal based person out here. I want to say conservative, but we could use both words. But you're the guy who's going to say, you know what? The government's out of control. This is what they do. These taxes, people need to get a bigger portion of their take-home pay. We're hearing a lot these days about, I don't know, refunding college kids and so forth who took out loans. And I have mixed opinions on that, because I think the whole college loan system is like a predatory lending enterprise. You can't, an 18-year-old kid, of course, is going to say, yeah, sign me up for the $40,000 so I can go to college. And I think, no, that person isn't making a good decision based on their life experience. I mean, there are some really smart 18-year-olds, so I can't just throw them all under the bus. But what say you about the whole government, big government out of control issue?
So, okay, obviously there's a problem where people are taking at face value what career politicians and lifelong bureaucrats are telling them, and without challenge.
Right.
But the events of the last 2 years have done nothing but simply have either pushed people further into believing in their politicians, or they've done the opposite. They radicalized them against career politicians and a government-based solutions, or they've been left with questions. And for the most part, a lot of people are just upset.
Right.
So of course they need an outlet for that. The politics at the end of the day is supposedly this temporary measure to have the people just give their opinion, right? This is a survey of what you feel the direction of the state or the country should go to, and really that's what we're living at right now. But let me repeat that again. There's nothing has radicalized Americans more than what has happened the last 2 years,
right?
And that has to be clear. All the nonsense, whether it's pastors accepting or churches accepting money from the federal government or their contractors to set up these whatever kind of government services are being provided to the church or out on church property, or in combination of, I mean, that's it. It always comes down to this issue about money and accountability. Who's running these things? The money issue is always going to be there, because frankly, they can control unlimited money, even at our expense. We can get into that, but the biggest issue in this election actually ends up being, we're now paying the bills of what happened 2 years ago in terms of inflation, in terms of that's creeping into our cost of living, in terms of that the politicians were so distracted with everything that happened in the last 2 years that all these cost of living basically changes that have or increases they never prepared for them properly, right? They just continued the same crony capitalist policies as before. Actually, they made them even worse. And then and really over the last year alone, and then they're surprised why the economy is the number one issue, and why the issue of property insurance, which is probably the number one issue on economically as it is. So I was talking about this morning that the actually offline that the Florida realtors finally released a statement talking about increased prices on property insurance. At this point within the same calendar year, we're up 2% as the forced mandate adjustment from the Office of the insurance regulation in the state of Florida. So that passed directly on to consumers. And in other words, it winds up on their mortgage statement, or they'll have to pay it in one flat fee at the end of the year when they're they made underpayments to their mortgages because it's been adjusted up, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be considered. I mean, we're talking about thousands of dollars of extra. That gets obviously it's supposed to be divided by 12 months, but really it's going to be hit one time at the end of the year, because that's how the accounting works for mortgages. That's what's happening. So the reality is that this is all coming home to roost. It's the common phrase that these political decisions, the politicians are just simply trying to run a race, literally, but not just to run for re-election, but really to stay ahead of these issues and set up themselves for to try and kick the can on the road to the next guy who's going to pick this up. And frankly, I do not see the scenario really is, at the end of the day, is politicians have no consideration for solving any of these issues unless they see the politics and the culture change around them that demands accountability and will make them pay a price for not doing anything about it. Whether that means DeSantis losing, or Charlie Crist winning, or I'm winning, and Tubb winning with me, or at the end of the day, at the end of the day, this whole structure that requires the legislature to really do it, or a series of emergency orders, like emergency declarations. Because I'll tell you what, the cost of living emergency that we're living in is probably a worse emergency than what we were facing in February of 2020. Yeah. So that I can say right now, because you can see it. Like, that's actual. We actually see people, the cost of living going up for people dramatically. Now, the reality that comes down to, as libertarians, we want to confront these issues not simply by how do I say this, by reforming government or whatever. Reforming government is nice, but the reality is people need relief now. So the only thing you can do is turn the spigot that forces people to have to participate in this fake economy, right? So what do I mean by fake? So this whole property insurance crisis is based on that there's a state law that actually requires homeowners who have a mortgage to keep property insurance. Right. They're forced into a system that, as long as they own property, they have to pay property taxes. Yeah. Right. So, and regardless of whether the government is the only people who say, I want your money, I want you to be accountable to me, that is the government, of how you spend your money and how you give me your taxes, but you can't keep me accountable about how I use that money, right? So this is a fake system. So the immediate solution is opt out. So the governor right now, DeSantis, could declare an emergency in this area, basically suspend the requirement in state law, force the legislature to say, well, if you really want this to be permanent, or you want this to reverse my decision, you're going to have to call a special session. Oh, you don't want to call a special session? Oh, well, then that taxpayers are just going to have to live this way, are going to have to get an exit strategy from having to pay all these extra costs immediately. So they'll do it for what, 40, 60 days for gas, for the gas tax. Yeah. But they won't do it for property insurance. I mean, it's maddening that they'll apply the same model, what I'm talking about, to little things here and there, but not the big picture, not the big item issues. This is where it comes down to. And frankly, we had a special session over the summer where Florida declared that it was going to create its own OSHA and just deregulate from away from the feds having control over occupational hazards or insurance of that effect. And they still haven't implemented it. They still have to implement it now. But right now, these are all additional costs. The whole point is that they've shown that there's interest in doing it. But when it comes down to it, implementation, they're standoffish. They're just backing away.
Yeah.
And reality is that taxpayers have to step up, even if you're not a regular voter, because I'll tell you, only half of all voting age adults are even registered to vote in Florida.
Yeah.
So you have to actually register. You have to. Why? Because at the end of the day, it's unless you plan on moving out of Florida, you're going to be stuck with the taxes here. And that's really where it comes down to. So libertarians always receive more support than really what our registrations are. Why is that? Because people know that we're serious when we say these things, and Republicans are never serious, and unfortunately, Democrats are serious when they make their promises. So that's really where we're at.
Yeah, that last line is so true. I mean, those guys, whatever you think of them, all right, they're incredibly organized. And they stick together. One of the things that they always do, even on the most ridiculous issues, and it's a good pivot over to cultural issues and what's going on in school boards across Florida. I think it's a great thing what's happening with parents getting involved. And I'll send this one over to you, Tub. It seems as though there's a bit of a cultural backlash or uprising going on, and parents, once they find out, one of the things that happened during the lockdown was they had school at home via Zoom like this, right? Where I'd be the teacher and you guys would be the students, and I'd be teaching, and the parent would walk in the room and they'd be like horrified by what their kids were learning, and it wasn't reading, writing, and just the basic stuff that I think we need to start to equip citizens. You know what I mean? It's like, this is a bottom line issue for me. It's like, we need to be able to teach. Plus, kids need to be learning vocations, right? We are in this vocational deficit where, you can go out and be like an HVAC person here in Florida and have a comfortable, very, very comfortable living. You could probably, make the kind of income like a doctor or a lawyer could make based on the amount of work that you have. It's a recession-proof business, but yet we're teaching kids all of this cultural nonsense. It's like cultural anarchy, and I don't want to get into all the disgusting and specific details here, but libertarians in the past, though, have been a little bit standoffish on this because of the whole idea of, hey, it's your life, you own yourself, you do what you want to do with your life. But I'm at the point where, this culture war stuff to me is going to be, the downfall of Western civilization. And parents need to be able to teach their kids what they want to teach, right? Tub, what do you think?
Yes, sir. Okay. So here's what's funny is I come at this from two different ways, two different times. For example, here in town, as I'm running for city council also, I've had an ongoing campaign. That's how Hector and I kind of matched up. I have an ongoing campaign for city council run here in town. And here in town, city council has nothing to do with the school board. The only thing they ultimately really do is kind of approve their budget and they're out. So in town, people will ask me about, hey, what do you think about the Duval School Board? And I'm kind of like, well, I have a lot of opinions, but I don't say anything because I'm not involved in that. Now, running for state, that thing's changing a little bit. Now I can have an opinion on what this looks like a little bit. Now, here's the other side of that. So for 6 years, I actually taught in a local Christian school. And a lot of people, so when they hear me kind of dog out the school system, they think I'm coming from this side of, well, you just hate teachers and you don't want to do all this. And I'm like, let's explain something. I was one of them. I fully understand both sides of this. And so here's what's happened. As what you were saying, so even inside this small Christian school that I taught at, as I started looking at things, I realized I had one class that I taught. It was one middle school 7th graders, which don't ever teach 7th graders, just don't. And so there was this one class that I taught of 7th graders. It was a history class. Other than that, I was Bible. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I had this one history class, and I started going through the curriculum, and I'm like, this isn't teaching the type of things that maybe these kids should know. So after I did one school year of that, I said, okay, we're going to see about changing this up a little bit. And so what I did is I actually spent the whole summer now compiling a book. Okay, trust me, you don't want me writing anything. Okay, so I compiled a book. I just grabbed information. That's all I did, and I taught them basics. And when I say basics, I mean things that you thought kids would have learned by this point. In all honesty, and so here's what I did. I covered the states, I covered the capitals, I covered how to find them on a map, I covered the Constitution, stuff along those lines, because
Mhm.
they weren't getting any of that. And so that's when I started realizing, hey, you know what? I don't think that this curriculum that we're teaching really gets these kids prepared for life at all. It kind of shoves them in a direction of where we want them. So I had, and let me tell you, we were talking before the show started about, like, I'm from Connecticut,
Yeah.
okay? And being from Connecticut and growing up, here's what happened. Homeschoolers were the freaks. Those
Yeah.
are the weird kids that nobody messed with, okay? And then you had private schoolers, and those were the rich kids.
Right.
And then you had broke government kids like us. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was always kind of in this thinking, I grew up in this thinking that's kind of how it looked. Well, I got older and I started seeing the system. I started seeing how the schools run. Changed my thinking. Because at that point, I started actively telling people, I said, listen, let me be honest with you. Homeschool, private school, government school. Those are your options. The order of taking care of things. Because those are the ones who are going to get involved and actually do something. So here's the I started telling kids in the schools, just conversations with them, the older, listen, maybe you don't need to go to college. I look thinking, this is the greatest teacher in the world. I don't have to go get more school. And what I would explain to them is that, you know what, not every is college. Not everybody wants that next book learning type of thing. Sometimes they want to get into life because they're better with these things than they are sometimes with this. And I say that because my oldest son is a perfect example of that. He's lucky he got out of high school. Okay, let's just be honest. He's like, I didn't kill him many times. He's like, we didn't have all these issues, and he made it through. I
Right.
knew college was not his thing, but he
Yeah.
had other things going on which I cannot. He's actually a tattoo artist now,
Yeah.
and so he was able to these and this, and he's doing great at it. Now, my youngest son, very book smart. That was for him. And I started telling him,
Yeah. Tub's dropping out a little bit on us here.
what you just alluded to. I said, you know, mechanics. We all need somebody to work on. Need these type of people, and it seems we've come to the. Oh, okay. Are we back? Yeah, I went a little crazy. Just
Yeah, you're kind of dropping out a little bit, Tub. There, it says that your bandwidth is low. I think they know that I'm talking to some hardcore libertarians, so they're jamming the signal again. So this.
All right.
It's what they do. It's okay. I have to talk to Comcast about this, but they don't listen to me. So, but you were making some great points about just your experience as a teacher, and I'm kind of worried about just this cultural malaise, which there's great art and there's great literature and there are great things that you could focus on, help kids sort of broaden their horizons and learn. And whether it's the media and the left-right paradigm and all that, hitting each other back and forth, I think, at the basic level inside these schools, because it happened in Lee County where I live, is that they're not really all that concerned about what parents have to say. So, I've watched these school board meetings where the parents just come up and they talk, and these people, they get irritated. They get almost angry that parents are now starting to participate in this, kind of like the parents thought, hey, you know what, I'm going to trust these people. I'm sending my kids to public school. What can I don't have high expectations. But what's happened is these schools didn't even meet those super low expectations that parents had. And now they're indoctrinating these kids in things or focusing on stuff that's, again, I think we were talking before about, how even an 18-year-old Hector, about the whole student loan thing. It's like, here comes a predatory lender and they're going to hit you, and the government's going to say, yeah, just take the $40K out, And again, that's still a contract and decision, and I get it. But kids need basics. My kid goes to a Christian school. Full disclosure, I have one kid left in the school system. He's only 8 years old. I had a kid pretty late in life, which ended up being really cool. But he's flourishing in the school. There's a huge difference. I mean, there's so much more interaction. And I think, what is missing in the whole public school system right now is accountability. All right. Mm-hmm. And when parents finally said, yeah, enough is enough, we're going to take control. Again, another great opportunity for libertarians to come in and say, yeah, well, this is us. We're the decentralized guys. We're the guys who are saying, that we need a parallel way of doing things, whether that's a private school or a homeschool or a homeschool group, a unit, maybe in a neighborhood where someone used to be a teacher. There are all kinds of innovative ways around and out of this. But instead of, breaking down the public school model, we seem to be propping it up all the time. Hey, I raised teacher pay. Well, great. How are teachers doing? Are they doing a good job? Right. Do they deserve that? I mean, go ahead. Anybody?
Okay, yeah. So they said we just had that problem right here. We just add to our millage rate to give teachers a raise. And I'm like, okay, but where's the accountability? Like, well, okay.
I don't know, Tub. Every time you start to talk, brother, you're just dropping out. Hector, let's
something. You reach a certain level, a certain goal. Okay, you deserve a raise. Go ahead.
We'll try Hector. What's your view on this? This Tub. He's got this brilliant point, and then Comcast just cuts him out. So go ahead. Your mic, Hector. Your mic. I can't.
Yeah. Every time I hear about this idea of accountability, I'm really thinking that people really should think to parental rights, right? Libertarians, we're really about who owns the kids, who's really responsible and accountable to the lives of those children, and it's really the parents. The parents are the ones responsible. They're the ones who are accountable. It's their rights that are actually on the line, and that's really the question about whether it's the school board or the governor or who's on first, right? Yeah. So really, when it comes down to it, is we're talking about a system that has that we've outsourced in some cases we've outsourced parenting, and in some cases government or the school boards and the bureaucrats have simply said no, we're taking this authority from you, and that's really what it comes down to. When you hear someone who's a school board member who's irritated because a parent wants to have their say, wants to have input, and they're like, well, you don't get to say anything. You already elected me to make these decisions for you, and I'm going to make these decisions for you. I mean, that's really quintessential. But you know what? It's a political problem. It's actually because you could say a politician who's not a school board member, like a governor or a senator, could say the same thing. You elected me to make these decisions, so I'm making these decisions. I don't care what you're saying right now. You have a problem with that? You have a vote, or you can take your kid out, or you can move, right? Because that's literally what that is literally what politics has become these days, because it's become about government choice. When I say school choice, people abuse the term school choice. It just means government choice, right? Yeah. It just means, we maybe give you a couple more government choices, but that's all it means. It's not about the accountability. It's not about parental rights. It's not about it's the say of the people who are actually ultimately responsible, right? So, and at the end of the day, the reason why we're running for office is because they took from us. I'm talking about the political class in this country, not just the ones in Florida. Yeah. Took from us something that was supposedly guaranteed, which was, if you don't like it, you can leave, right? You can move, you can go somewhere else. So in some places in Florida, it was bad enough that people had to leave. People had to close their businesses. Yeah. People's lives were destroyed. And of course, it's not as, if you're talking about California and New York, the level of destruction is a order of magnitude less, certainly. But right. the question is, though, we have been, this idea that you can vote with your feet, that if you don't like it, go choose something else. But now we're locked into these choices by the politicians, and that's what we're fighting against. And ultimately, the solutions that libertarians bring forward to all these problems always comes back to the idea that, let us let us have the right back, right? Give us the chance to make those decisions for ourselves, not you guys who think that you guys are basing it on let's say educated guesses. For instead of saying the science, let's just call it educated guesses, right? So
I would call it,
much so based on
uneducated guesses. Never mind. All right, go ahead.
Well, the worst kind of policies that we live through actually are technically based on the bottom line of corporate profits,
right?
And that's really that's sad, but has to be said, because if we in the middle of what we've been hearing is called a pandemic. We've been seeing record-breaking legal settlements with the same pharmaceutical companies that have been issuing these emergency use treatments, for lack of a better word, that are safe and effective.
Yes.
Then I'm trying to avoid the YouTube strikes. Words. So the point is that the same years, same time period, we're seeing these multi-billion-dollar. I mean, we're talking about over $100 billion in different settlements that were illegal settlements, including that the state of Florida was involved, certainly. That against these same pharmaceutical companies, that money has been dispersed, but we have not seen it. The people have not seen it any which way. I'm not even sure where that money is right now for those legal settlements. But that's really what's going on. And for the most part, we were told. We've been having this debate since before 2008 about your rights to make healthcare decisions for yourself, and and to follow the treatment of medical practitioners that are that of our choice. Those things are have been eroded under the current system.
Yeah,
and that's something that should be very concerning, because the same people. Ultimately, it deals with every health issue, and they want to basically make it, of course, a part of public policy, which means that you have no privacy. They want you to be. I mean, we've been hearing about it. This is the first time in my life where I actually seen a technocratic government in the United States raise up and say we want to establish rule by experts that are so-called experts, or an appeal to authority. Not by politicians, not by the people who were elected, but by mandates from unelected bureaucrats. And in such a way, I mean, we've seen it when it comes to firearms or self-defense, like with the ATF or with other law enforcement trying to restrict the franchise of self-defense, right?
Yeah.
Because why? Because they basically enjoy the monopoly on violence, and they don't want to share it with anybody, even if it is for a noble cause. So at the end of the day, I'm very happy to be in this position and hold the line for what libertarians stand for, and be joined by Tub here, Rorabaugh, Pastor Tub Rorabaugh, because ultimately one thing always strikes me in my mind that he can add to this is that people, whether you're on the right or you're on the left, they've basically been using using government policy to enforce their moral standards on people. And that's a no-go. That's a no-go for any person of faith, because to impose your rights on somebody else is to deny the very fact that they are, they're human with certain franchise of choice, right? And frankly, how do you like to say it? What's that when in regards to enforcing enforcing morality through people's through government policy?
Should I even try? Because nobody wants me to let me speak on here. All right, so let me give it a try and see how this goes. All right. So I usually refer to it as Christians have gotten lazy. And what they've done, rather than go make disciples, what they want to do is they want to elect officials to make laws to make people act like Christians. And that was never the plan. Like I've actually used the Bible as my example to be a libertarian, because here's what happens: is the Apostle Paul, when he went into new towns, he never once went to the political leaders and said, "Hey, you guys need to make a bunch of laws so that this can start going the way we want it to go." Instead, what the Apostle Paul did was he went into towns and he made disciples. Like he changed people's thinking. He brought them to Christ, and in bringing them to Christ, they started changing an area because that's the idea that those people wanted in that area. It was not government force; it was change of attitude, change of mentality. So I believe that if we, as a church, just to kind of say, if we want society to be different, then let's go out and do what we're called to do. Let's not use government to do it for us.
That's good. That, it's funny that you guys went into that area, because the last topic I wanted to cover was Christians and libertarians. It's for the people I talk with, they say, oh, libertarians are like anything goes. And, the Bible says, has a list of do's and don'ts. And how are these things compatible? And I think you did a good job there kind of saying, look, it's not, the government coercion is not, it hasn't worked. It never works. This is why our foreign policy stinks, by the way. And I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. We can do that maybe another time. But it just seems to me that like conservatives and liberals, because they do their thing too on the other side, they've got their own religions. And the religion of public health is like my favorite one. That one just makes so much sense to me, right? But everybody has kind of like a religion that they try to follow based on who's in office. You've got the MAGA religion now. People say, I'm MAGA, I'm ultra MAGA, I'm, extreme MAGA. And I'm just like, okay, I want to make my community great. It's not like I don't believe in a phrase or a slogan, but it's me. I've got to do it and you've got to do it. And virtue is important. And you don't get virtue from government, right? Don't you get it from, you get it from your faith, you get it from your church. Some people get it from their higher power, whatever that would be. But guys, close out with maybe some thoughts about Christian libertarianism. Is that a thing, or is this an up and coming thing that I didn't see? Or, explain that.
Let me start off on that. So first and foremost, we need to separate what I've seen a lot of changes in the Libertarian Party recently.
Yeah.
Right? Basically, people who have assumed the individual, the faith in the individual is the paramount, right? It's the most important ethos for a political movement, right? That aligns with faith. That aligns with Christianity. It aligns with most conservative, oriented religions. Now, with that said, I've also noticed this splinter of thought within libertarian circles, which conflates a libertine lifestyle with libertarianism. It's like if they're intricately mixed or something. No, at the end of the day, like I said, it's about personal accountability, but the ability for someone to make the choice for themselves, not a government, not a politician, not a bureaucrat, to make those choices for themselves. That's at the heart of the message. And guess what? The idea of faith is, you have faith in your own ability to do the same. And, whether you have that faith because it's values that were instilled on you from parents or from a pastor or from a religious text, that at the end of the day, you have those values that they aspire to in terms of virtue. And that is what unfortunately, that is what we're challenging in today's practice. Where politicians simply are liars. I mean, they are just making things up as they go along. They have little to no virtue, and they appeal to this either authority or to this lesser evil conversation that at the end of the day, it literally is just more evil, right? So, that's how I've observed it, and as someone who's sits on the state board of the Libertarian Party of Florida, and as someone who's also running, of course, running for governor, I'm not here to be pastor in chief, and certainly Tubb isn't either, but the point is that we do lead by example, and we do try to present these choices to the public, and we want them to make the most of it, rather than keep the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting the same a different result.
Yeah,
and that's where I'm at.
Tubb, you're the expert on this, brother. I toss it over to you.
Take it home.
I think you went a little too big with expert, but let's see what we have here. All right, so here's I have enough problems getting Christians to act like Christians. Okay, so I'm not worried about all of a sudden the world trying to act like.
Oh man, all right, he's dropping out again. This is bad.
I'm more of the idea of let's just all right. Maybe if I stand still or something. So here's what happened. I personally, as a Christian and as a pastor, I have a pretty strict lifestyle. I have a pretty boring lifestyle in all reality. And what I tend to do as a libertarian is I tend to say, hey, listen, I'm going to defend a lot of the beliefs that I don't practice myself. Like I believe that as people, you have your freedom to go do what you want to go do, and I think government should stay out of that. And so now here's what I tell people, and I'm very clear about this inside of our church and everything. And I tell them, I say, here's the thing. I says that we cannot, as Christians, do a lot of these things that we allow the world to do. Okay, the things that I'm defending, I cannot do by my faith and my walk with God. I cannot do those things, but I don't care if you do. Now, if you come to me and you tell me you're a Christian and then you're doing these things, I'm not going to come at you as a government issue. I'm going to come at you as a faith issue. Hey, you really ought not be doing like that. You ought not be living like this because, well, you're a libertarian. I know, and that's fine for them. and that's kind of where I stand at. I don't think that we are in any position to go out and tell them how to live. That as a Christian, I have my own walk with God, and if I want them to be like me, bring them Jesus, and don't worry about bringing them the government.
Yeah. Wow. Great answers, guys. Both of you guys. I'm sitting here and I'm learning. This is cool when you talk to people and you're not just interviewing, but you're like, hey, these guys are good. And I've really enjoyed having both of you on today. Where, Hector, is all of your social media? Are you guys on Twitter, Facebook? Where can people find you and support your campaign? Microphone.
I'm at roosforflorida.com. Sorry, earlier actually I was laughing and I didn't want it to sound out.
It's all right.
Roos for Florida, ROOS for Florida.com or HectorRoos.com. You know, Tub, I always find Tub on Facebook. I don't even think he's on Twitter, but I'm on Roos for Florida, every social.
Nice.
And Tub is Tub for Jack, so you can definitely find him there.
Yeah, you're running for city council, right, Tub, in addition to lieutenant governor?
I am. Yeah, so I'm at Tub for Jacks on Facebook only. I don't mess with no Twitter. I don't want to get involved in that mess. Listen, that's a whole nother mess over there that I don't need. Like, in fact, I even tell people, I say, listen, I say, for 9 years, I had no social media at all. And my life was just fine. I did okay. Still got through. Everybody still lived. Everything went as it should. The campaign basically said, hey, Tub, you got to be on something. So I guess I took Facebook just because it's okay. I'll do this because I'm too wordy for Twitter. So I took on Facebook, and so you can find me at Tub for Jack on Facebook, and then Tub for
dropping out again.
Our website.
All right, so Tub, say that last part again because you dropped out one more time. No, did we lose Tub completely?
I don't know. Tubforjacks.com.
Tubforjacks.com. Okay.
TUB4FOR Jacks JAX.com.
All right. Very good, guys. Again, I want to thank both of you for coming on. This was great. Maybe we can do some more as the election gets closer. We need to let more people know that there are other choices out there. And I'll tell you what, the Libertarian Party, if it gets its act together and herding the cats and getting everybody at least focused on, I think, what I used to call the big ticket items, big ticket issues, I really think you guys can make some waves and change some minds and hopefully, grow the party and grow the movement. So thanks again, guys, for being on.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.